But there are people out there who blur the lines themselves between understanding where the show starts and their participation as real people and fans ends. You can't just let anything play out. And there's no amount of goodwill that the business can earn through years and years and years of storytelling that you claim to approve of because you don't understand what comes next. Ladies and gentlemen, WrestleMania 41 is in the books and we've got a lot to talk about. So let's just jump right into this because the results of WrestleMania 41 were, in my opinion, I thought WrestleMania 41 was really good. And it's crazy that a positive review of 41 is somehow a hot take, but that apparently is where we're at right now. So this is the Lariat Lounge. This is the home of smart takes, hard hits, real talk. I'm Everson, your host. WrestleMania 41 had some really interesting outcomes. I'm going to go through the outcomes of 41, and then after that, I'm going to touch on some things that happened at 41 that rolled into the Raw after Mania that I thought were very, very interesting. And some of the things that I have heard in the wrestling atmosphere that are really pointing to how deep and intricate WWE and their writing staff intends to go with certain storylines and the potential for really, really awesome storytelling going through into WrestleMania 42. So if you enjoyed any of the other podcast episodes that have gone up thus far, which I tried to front load a lot of stuff so that when this launch showed up, you'd have some content to listen to. If you enjoy this stuff, if you like these takes that are pertinent to not just wrestling as we watch it, but diving deeper into the stories, why these things are important, why character development matters, why stories matter. Let a friend know. Let a wrestling friend who, like you, appreciates great wrestling content. Tell them to come check out the Lariat Lounge. You can always reach out to me at thelariatlounge@gmail.com. Let me know what you thought of Monday Night Raw. Let me know what you thought of those results because Monday Night Raw really has some crazy stuff going on. This is the first episode of the Lariat Lounge since Mania started because we did an episode for the Hall of Fame and now we're back. So let's jump through this card really quickly. We'll get to night 1 first, then night 2, and then we'll hit some of the real standout moments. And then let's roll into Monday Night Raw because that's where really the fallout from Mania begins, where the new season begins, and where some of the really cool stuff, in my opinion, begins to take place. And really in the gap in between Mania 41's conclusion and Raw's beginning, but we'll get to all of that. So I've got my same printed out match card from Wikipedia. So these matches are not in the order that they were at Mania 41, but I'm going to go right down this card and we're going to talk about some of these results real quick. So the War Raiders versus the New Day. The New Day, we picked that the New Day should have won and the New Day did win. That was a good decision on behalf of WWE in my humble opinion. The War Raiders are a great tag team, but their run at the top of the tag team division, it really wasn't going anywhere. Now, honestly, they haven't done much with the New Day, but putting the titles on the New Day is better than having it on the War Raiders. Nothing against Eric and Ivar, but their stick was kind of stale. So let's give it to the New Day. Let's move on from the War Raiders. Let's build that tag team division up because one of the things with that particular match coming out of Mania 41 into Raw is that we still really don't have a direction. We still really don't have a direction with the tag team division right now. So I'm hoping that we get a nice infusion. I would really love to see Penta and Rey Fenix come back together, the Lucha Brothers, give us another dynamic tag team. But right now we don't have that. So, I mean, it is what it is. It's a better decision to have the title on the New Day right now anyway. So the New Day came out on top. We're okay with that decision. The next match that was on this list, which I do not believe was the actual next match, was El Grande Americano versus Rey Mysterio. Now, Rey Mysterio was injured. He was injured on SmackDown before Mania. So who stepped into his place was Rey Fenix. Now, Rey Fenix recently debuted, so I think that was a good person to put in place of Rey. Definitely was better than putting in somebody like Dragon Lee or any of the other members of the LWO. Just because as good as Dragon Lee is, he just does not have the pull that would bring in the attention like a Rey Fenix does, particularly because of the jump recently from AEW. So it was a good match. Do not sleep on Chad Gable. I don't think anybody really does, but it had to be said. Chad Gable is good at what he does. I get that there is some backlash against this El Grande Americano character. And when we talked previously, I thought that El Grande Americano should lose his match. They should unmask him and we should move on from it. But WWE have different plans. I am interested to see where it is that they go with this because I thought that thing had run its course. But listen, one of the things that you're going to hear from me often on this podcast until I am given reason to believe otherwise is that WWE, their creative team, they have a plan. And these plans are not always what people think with regards to how long in development certain plans have been. I think that we become kind of cynical as fans in general, which I will absolutely touch on a little bit later on. So I'm not going to, jump the shark here. But they have plans. So El Grande Americano goes over Rey Fenix. I don't think Rey loses anything in this. I think his star power right now is just a little too big for that loss to really matter that much. And the match was stellar. It was really good. You cannot take anything away from Chad Gable and his ability to hold his own in here with some of these luchadors. Now, he's not flying around like they are, but that reverse 450, that was insane. That was an insane move. And I don't think it's one of those situations where none of us knew that Chad Gable had that in him. But to see him do it, it's nothing short of incredible. So let's take nothing away from Chad Gable and let's take nothing away from his ability to do what it is that he does because he does it very, very well. So El Grande Americano goes over. Hats off to Rey Fenix for stepping in last minute. It was a great match to get us to what else was coming on night one. And boy, are we headed to, we are headed to some of the best stuff that I personally can remember in wrestling. We ain't got there yet. We got a couple other things to go through. So we got Jade Cargill versus Naomi. Now, in this match, I said that I really would have wanted Naomi to win this match. I still think Naomi should have won this match. However, I'm not taking anything away from Jade Cargill. I think they had a pretty good match. I think nowadays it's hard for Naomi to have a bad match. And Naomi is a very trusted and capable wrestler in the ring. You can put her in the ring with someone that you want to get over and trust that Naomi is going to get them over. So I think Jade has an undeniable star power, like we said before, and I don't think a loss was really going to hurt Jade in that way. I think that Naomi would have done better with that win, but WWE felt different. Now, I do think, and I still believe that when you have a heel turn like that, and you take that much time to invest in turning a good guy heel, they need to show why that heel turn was beneficial to them in some kind of way. You go through this entire metamorphosis and then you come out on the other side with a loss. It just kind of makes us look at the decision that you made from a storyline perspective to descend to the dark side. For what reason? What purpose did it serve? It didn't really seem like it served a purpose to give her this loss. But we'll see where this goes. I think they could have made a different decision, but hey, I'm not mad. Jade Cargill, like I said, great talent. She's going to grow. She's going to get better at what it is that she does. And Naomi is just a gem. And so I'm just happy to see both of them on the WrestleMania card because there's a lot of people who are in WWE who've been grinding away for a very long time and should have been on the card and don't get an opportunity to do things at WrestleMania. We'll talk about that as well later on. But Jade goes over. Good for her. The next match that we're going to talk about is Jey Uso versus Gunther for the WWE World Heavyweight Championship. Now, hats off to Jey Uso for pulling out that victory. I thought the match was pretty good. There's a lot of sentiment online from people who have very negative things to say about Jey Uso, which is, I spoke about this before. Jey Uso is very accomplished in the ring. He has a very successful career in the tag team division. I don't think that Jey is as bad as a lot of people out here are portraying him as. I think Jey is going to be a great world champion. How long his title reign is going to be, I don't know. I don't know how long Jey's title reign is going to be. And honestly, unless his title reign becomes a joke, which they shouldn't do, please don't Kofi him, because we all remember what happened with Kofi after Kofi Mania. Kofi wins the title, and then I can't remember who beat him. I think it was it Lesnar? Did Brock Lesnar beat him? I don't know. I'm going to have to go look that up. But whatever the case may be, what I remember was that Kofi got destroyed. As long as the fans don't turn on Jey, I could see him having a fun title run. And it depends on what direction they take, right? Because Jey's arc right now could go a couple different directions. There's one that I'm thinking it could possibly go in, but it's less likely, that has to do with events that happened on Raw. And then there's another direction that could be more likely, and that also has to do with events that happened on Raw. So for now, let's just say that Jey and Gunther had a pretty good match. It wasn't the greatest match, but it was good. It was certainly not as bad as the way people are portraying it online. But for now, Jey goes over, good on him. Okay, the main event of night one, Roman Reigns versus Seth Rollins versus CM Punk. Seth comes out, his entrance is always dope. The costume wardrobe change in the middle of his entrance I thought it was great. I'm sitting there watching that with my wife, and when the screen goes black, I don't know what exactly happened here. Now, she claims she knew it was probably a costume change, and maybe others caught that as well. I was a little flummoxed. I was like, I'm not sure what's happening right now. But then when it came back and he was in all white, excellent, chef's kiss. And him burning down the set with the flamethrower, that's awesome, man. And I think it's very symbolic and emblematic of what comes next. But then you get Roman, who comes out, and Roman has got his custom Jordan shoes on. Look, Roman, if he doesn't have a deal with Jordan, he should. But Roman comes out looking like $1 million. Those mini Trons that were coming down as he was walking, that was showing his whole family lineage, that was great. It was a great touch. And it plays into his the bloodline and where he feels he sits in that hierarchy of representing his family. So I think that was great too. But then they give Punk the whole shebang, right? They give him the video package. They're playing this fire burns during the video package. He's quoting his first promo, the one about I don't drink, I don't smoke. It's a great setup. And then he comes out with Heyman. Cult of Personality is being played by In Living Color. That's the band who performs the song. Punk comes out in his classic yellow, and it's just a nostalgic pop that for fans of Punk from back in the day in WWE, it just really hits different, and I appreciated it. So let's jump ahead. The match goes back and forth, back and forth. There are a lot of near falls, a lot of finishers, a lot of finisher reverses, but everybody has seen it at this point. Paul Heyman's got a choice, and he's got a choice to choose between giving this chair to either CM Punk or Roman Reigns. He chooses to give that chair to CM Punk. The look on Roman's face is one of utter betrayal, which Roman should understand at this point, but he doesn't. The delusional heel is formulated well in every one of Roman's actions. And I think that is what makes these scenes very compelling. It's the character work, right? And understanding the character development and the stories and how these stories are supposed to be being fleshed out. Think of it like a movie. Think about the plot of a movie. What drives people to believe what they believe, to do what they do, and what makes them feel justified in these actions? right? So we can go through the blow by blow of this, but what is really important about this whole angle, which has got some people online in a real hissy fit about things. So he gives the chair to Punk, and Punk is about to deliver the chair shot to Roman, and then Heyman gives the low blow to Punk. Roman in this moment seems incredibly happy that he has his wise man back with him. It seems genuine that he is happy to have him back in his corner. But Roman is propagating a very unbalanced relationship. Now, some would say this is exactly what the bloodline has always been. And you're right. Roman has always been the guy in the bloodline who takes credit for everything that is successful in the bloodline. He imposes his will on all of the people who called him the tribal chief, from Jimmy and Jay to Sammy to the fans, demanding acknowledgement, most likely because Roman, as the character on screen, has a very complex need for validation. All of the time that Roman spent being the big dog and never getting that validation from the fans, as a character, it probably hurt him a little bit. It probably hurt him a lot. So when he came back during the pandemic era, he had a chip on his shoulder. But I don't think that chip on his shoulder was one that had the intent to push everyone away. But it was one that was rooted in someone who desperately wanted to be accepted, someone who desperately wanted to be acknowledged. And so he puts himself in a position where he's going to force you to acknowledge him. He's going to take his seat at the head of the table, and he's going to force his family to acknowledge him. He's going to force the fans to acknowledge him. And he's going to force Paul Heyman to acknowledge him. Now, maybe he did not force Paul Heyman in the sense of physically assault him, though we see him do this later on. But he definitely expects that acknowledgement from his wise man. It doesn't come across as someone who loves and appreciates the people who love and appreciate him. Roman takes advantage of this and he pushes everyone away to the point where after WrestleMania 40, he's lost everyone except Paul. And so Roman looks genuinely happy that Heyman is in his corner again, that he's turned on CM Punk, the guy who dared to demand favors of the tribal chief and the man who seemingly makes his wise man, act against his own orders. Because Roman told Paul, let this fool down gently. Tell him you're not going to do this favor. And even when Paul said that he could not do that, and he explained to Roman that he asked me of a favor, Roman takes this as I don't have to pay him anything. Roman doesn't even acknowledge that Paul, as a person, has a will of his own, that everything that is Paul Heyman's will is at the tribal chief's discretion. And so if Paul makes a deal and Paul has to honor some kind of deal, that reflects on the tribal chief. Paul's will does not matter. To me, that is what's behind the smile on Roman's face when Heyman turns on Punk. So Roman picks up the chair. Roman beats the hell out of Punk. Then Heyman points to Seth. Look, my tribal chief. Seth, in a position that mirrors Roman during the Shield breakup, is prone. Roman pushes Paul gently behind him as he cues up what is going to be the mother of all beatdowns. And Heyman turns on Roman too. Seth, feigning the pain of the fight, stands up and without turning to look, extends his hand, and Paul places the chair in the hands of the visionary. Seth takes the chair to Roman and with one stomp pins Roman and wins the match. Seth and Heyman leave together. That's the conclusion of night one. Seth is the only one who has never lied to Heyman, has never manipulated Heyman, has never used him. We just talked about Roman, but let's talk about Punk for a second. CM Punk did not come to Paul's rescue when the bloodline took him out after WrestleMania 40. To that, neither did Roman. When Roman got beat, where was Roman Reigns afterwards? He left. He left Paul all alone. The bloodline found him, caught up to him, put him through a table, and put him out of commission for quite a while. Now, let's look at Punk and Heyman. When Punk left the company. He was disgruntled. One of the people that he talked to was Paul. And if I'm getting the story right, and mind you, I'm all talking kayfabe. If I'm getting the story right, Punk and Heyman had a conversation. Heyman did not want Punk to leave, partly because he felt like Punk was good enough to stay here. He needed to be here. But also, Heyman was afraid. Heyman was afraid without Punk being there, the company was going to fire him. WWE was going to fire Paul Heyman. Punk understood that, but Punk had to go. He could not stay. The company was bad for him. And so Punk left. And what happened shortly after Punk left? Paul Heyman lost his job. Fast forward, CM Punk returns to WWE. And in that time that he returns to WWE, there's no real interaction between Punk and Heyman. Now, this is for good reason that Heyman is with his tribal chief and Punk is doing his own thing. He's very preoccupied with other feuds. Heyman comes to his friend to ask for help because going into War Games, no one wants to team with Roman. The bloodline was fractured and they needed another person. Heyman had originally gone to Seth. Seth said no. So then they went to CM Punk. CM Punk accepted, but on the condition that Paul do him a favor. Now, we know at this point that that favor was for Paul Heyman to escort him to the ring at WrestleMania 41. Now, if we're going by the storyline, the kayfabe story, based on match outcomes and what had happened at the time, CM Punk was not in the main event of WrestleMania. So the only person that would have known what that favor was when Punk said, "You owe me a favor," in some conversation with Paul that he and CM Punk had prior to War Games, was CM Punk. And let's say CM Punk didn't know what that favor was. Let's say he told Paul, "You owe me a favor. I don't know what that favor is, but at some point you owe me a favor." Paul says, "Done," because my tribal chief needs help. CM Punk agrees. The match at WrestleMania becomes the match at WrestleMania becomes a triple threat. Roman believes that this is the favor that he is doing for CM Punk, that this match be made into a triple threat, which is why Roman is carrying himself the way he's carrying himself at the contract signing to make the match into a triple threat. But that's not the favor. And in storyline, Paul does not know what that favor is yet. When he tells us all what that favor is, we find out that the only reason that CM Punk is asking for this favor is to get at Roman Reigns. Now, either Punk knows full and well the position that this is going to put Paul in and does it anyway, or Punk never gives it any thought and makes this decision. Neither one of these things is a way you treat a friend. This is Paul's argument. This is Paul's sentiment. This is something that Paul says in an interview he has with Pat McAfee post-Mania. Suffice it to say, this gives impetus for why Paul Heyman makes the decision that he makes. Because when it comes to CM Punk, when it comes to Roman Reigns, as different as they are, they both did very similar things with regards to how they regarded and treated Paul Heyman. They use him and they manipulate him for their own ends. And that's not what a friend should do. And if you say you love your wise man, that's not how you treat someone you love. And Paul is done with being mistreated. So screw Punk, screw Roman. There's discourse online where people will say, and people who I think get into the stories, but their perception of the characters in the stories are tinted by their own personal bias. They have people that they like and people that they don't like. And not from a, I like the face, I dislike the heel kind of perspective, right? That's the contract that we have as wrestling fans when we go watch a show or when we are watching the show from Netflix or from our computer or our phone or our TV, right? We are the audience, quote unquote, and they are the quote unquote good and or bad guys. The bad guy does something heelish, we boo. When the good guy does something heroic, we cheer. Yay. That's what we do. We boo or we cheer. That's what we do. There are some people who their personal biases override their ability to play their role. They like Roman Reigns. they don't really like CM Punk. The bleed of reality into fiction taints their perspectives. So what does this cause? Well, if you have sour feelings about CM Punk, but you love your tribal chief, you can't understand why Paul Heyman would turn on his tribal chief. Because Roman gave you everything. Pause. You're only looking at this from one perspective, and that's a perspective of a Roman Reigns fan. When you ask this same person, well, he turned on CM Punk as well. What about that? This person will respond with something like, well, I don't care about CM Punk. It's not about whether you care or not care about them. The story is the story despite how you feel. And the fact that you can't get out of your feelings to appreciate a story is the reason why you're part of the most annoying aspect of professional wrestling right now. That nothing can just be good. You can't just enjoy a story. You can't just let anything play out. And there's no amount of goodwill that the business can earn through years and years and years of storytelling that you claim to approve of, while simultaneously bashing it at every step in the journey because you don't understand what comes next. We'll get into that later. I'm jumping the shark. But that is the reason, in my opinion, why the actions of Paul Heyman at WrestleMania 41 make perfect sense, and Seth has never lied to him. Also, something that Heyman touches on in an interview on the Pat McAfee show prior to Monday Night Raw, which is something that I was thinking about prior to watching that interview. Paul Heyman, as a character on screen, portrays himself as someone who is a man of his word. You may think he's slimy, and sometimes he may be, but he pays what he owes. So he made a promise to his friend that he was going to honor the commitment that he made to him. Punk made a commitment that he would show up at War Games, and in return, you do this favor for me. As much as Heyman did not like it, as much as Paul knew the situation that it was going to put him in with Roman Reigns, Paul made the decision to honor his commitment, to keep his word, because his word matters. Even if that was going to mean that he was going to be in hot water. Even if he knew that Punk was using him. He said he was going to do it, and he did it. He honors his commitments. So, yes, he does this thing for Punk because he's honoring his commitment. But once that's done, I'm walking away from our friendship because you don't treat me like a friend, CM Punk. You used me as a tool to get at the person that I care about, my tribal chief. You manipulated me and put me in this impossible situation, and you cared nothing about what happened to me. But that also goes for you, Roman Reigns. I gave everything for you. And when you lost, you left, and you left me here to get beat up, and I was always there for you. And then I get put in this impossible situation, and not only do you not care about how this affects me, but then you put your hands on me. You bully me, you push me around, and you treat me terribly, which is in essence what you've always done. Just because, it's storyline wise, right? For the people who get weird about this. Just because you're the person who brought me back into WWE, does that mean that somehow I'm supposed to just be happy about or take your abuse, your misuse, your mistreatment, and then your abandonment? No. So this provides all the impetus, in my opinion, for why Paul Heyman did what he did. And Seth hasn't lied to him. Seth has been telling him the entire time, don't trust Roman. He's been telling everyone, don't trust Roman. And don't trust CM Punk. He's a cancer that's only here for himself. He doesn't care about this business. He doesn't care about this industry or moving it forward. When he was out and he was not here, he took every shot he could to destroy this place. While I was here working to keep this place going when he left. And Roman was given the keys to the kingdom. Couldn't figure it out. Meanwhile, I'm here doing everything under the sun, getting over like crazy, but you decide to strap the rocket to him, and he can't get it done. When he comes back, and he's now the tribal chief, he finally reaches that pinnacle that everyone expected him to be at. And not only does he reach it, he exceeds it. He does exceedingly well. But now he believes that the industry just revolves around him. He is more important than the business. He shows up when he wants, and in this historic title run, he takes the title with him. The Universal Championship was barely ever on programming, and that if the business is created or reformed in Roman's image, it's going to be recreated in the image of selfish people who believe that they're above the business, show up for work whenever they feel like showing up to work, and expecting everyone to acknowledge them for doing so. Stop him when he starts lying. This is compelling character work. This is a compelling story. It's got depth and it's got nuance. None of these characters are cut and dry. There is no cut and dry good person. There's no cut and dry bad person. This is just well told wrestling storylines. This is good stuff. This is really good stuff. It's part of the reason why this angle at the end of WrestleMania Night 1 was talked about far more than the main event of Night 2. But I don't take the same position on Night 2 that a lot of people do. I really don't. So speaking of Night 2, Liv and Raquel versus Lyra Valkyria and a mystery partner. Now that partner turns out to be Becky Lynch. Bayley apparently has an injury. I don't know if that's legitimate or if it's part of the show. I hope it's not legitimate because I just watched the Chris Van Vliet interview with Bayley that came out, I want to say either yesterday or earlier today. But I believe that interview was filmed right before WrestleMania. So, because I believe Bayley was still talking about the match that she was going to have as partners with Lyra. So I think it came out right before SmackDown. I hope that her injury is not legitimate because there is a knee injury that she had relatively recent. And as she alluded to in that interview, that injury is worse than what people thought it was, which was the reason why she was out as long as she was. So, Godspeed to Bayley if that injury is legitimate, but she had to be replaced, and she was replaced with Becky Lynch. Liv and Raquel lose to Becky Lynch and Lyra Valkyria. This is a decision that I genuinely disagreed with at the time, but I am a person that is all about the let's see how this plays out because I feel like WWE has earned a bit of trust equity with me. They've been writing incredible stories over the last 3 or 4 years. They've come a very long way from where they used to be. If you're a wrestling fan like I am, you remember those dark days where the wrestling stories were just stupid. So I believe they've come a long way. So we see when Monday Night Raw comes around that there's a rematch, obviously. Becky and Lyra Valkyria versus Liv and Raquel, a rematch. Liv and Raquel win the match. Becky immediately turns on Lyra, which I don't know particularly what that's setting up. Last time I heard, I thought Becky was still filming Star Trek. So that was one of my concerns was if she's not going to be around full time, why would you put the tag team titles on her? That was one thing. But the other thing was Lyra's already the women's IC champion, right? We already have a problem with how women are getting TV time, particularly in championship segments. So to put more than one title on one female, in my opinion, does a disservice to the rest of the women on the roster. Either it seems like you devalue them by putting too much value on one person while simultaneously taking something out of rotation for other people to that would give others a spotlight. Lyra already has the IC championship. There's no need for her to have 2 titles. But they rectified this on Raw. I guess they're possibly moving into some angle, moving into Backlash with Becky and Lyra, which kind of lends to this idea that Bayley might actually be hurt. And that sucks because I love Bayley. And it really sucks if she's legitimately injured that she got injured the day before WrestleMania. Like, that blows. That really, really sucks. So my prayer is that this is an angle that can work Bayley back into the story. And if it's not, like I said, Godspeed to Bayley. Hope she recovers soon and gets to come back to do whatever it is that she wants to do. But moving on to the next match, or the next match on this list, because I'm not listing the order, AJ Styles versus Logan Paul. This match, I did not expect to say that Logan Paul beat AJ Styles at WrestleMania. But I am all about the story. So even though I thought that you would just not have Logan win this, the fact that they brought in Karrion Kross at the end of this match to try and stop Logan Paul's goon from giving Logan the brass knuckles. He does so to then offer those brass knuckles to AJ. AJ turns him down, goes into the ring, misses the phenomenal forearm, gets caught with Logan's loaded right hand, hit with the pulverizer, and is pinned 1, 2, 3. That leads directly into Monday. Well, actually, that leads into the work shoot interview that Karrion Kross, or Killer Kross, I wish he would just go back to Killer Kross. I wish they would let him go back to Killer Kross instead of Karrion Kross. I hate Karrion, but I'm going to call him Killer Kross. We're going to manifest that. So this work shoot interview that Killer Kross interrupts, where he goes off on not being included in WrestleMania, despite the fans wanting him to be there, despite the fans recognizing the work that he's doing, that he didn't ask to compete against Randy at WrestleMania. The fans demanded that. They demanded that on SmackDown. But in his words, instead of going with that, you chose to go for clicks. Now, you might as well jump ahead on this. So Randy Orton was on this card, and he was supposed to wrestle Kevin Owens. Kevin Owens, unfortunately, has a serious neck injury, and he's probably going to be out for the better part of a year, maybe longer. So Randy shows up at Mania, and who comes out to wrestle him but Joe Hendry? Now, I don't know a ton about Joe Hendry, but he's very popular. And Joe Hendry had a WrestleMania moment. It was nice. It was a great showing for Joe Hendry. The match was there for fan service, for Randy to have his 20th WrestleMania match. And I think it was fine. There was nothing wrong with that match. Killer Kross is angry, however, not at Joe. He gives his props to Joe. Good on him, because Joe is a great wrestler and he deserves to have a spot. But not that one, because you've got people on the roster who have been busting their ass for a long time to get in these spots and can't get them. Killer Kross talked about the advice that he got from Goldberg, where Goldberg told him that the best thing that he could do was to be a good soldier. And he said, you know what good soldier gets you? It gets your time cut. It gets your ideas that are solicited from you boiled down into just decent ideas. He goes in on AJ and says that you're the best of us. And you could have taken this opportunity to knock Logan Paul down a peg, who's not one of us, but you didn't. You chose your ego. And what did it get you? It got you losing at WrestleMania to Logan Paul. He also mentioned, how many WrestleManias do you have left? You are venerated in this industry, and you allow something like this to happen? And then he called out some suit in the truck who made these stupid decisions to go F themselves. Now, Scarlett plays this very well, and to the point where he says, go F yourself, she's got this look on her face where she's got like her hand on his arm. And it's kind of, if you're married and you've ever been heated and you're talking to someone else, you understand what that hand on the arm is. That is your significant other not wanting to interrupt you because they're not trying to argue with you in front of these people, but she's trying to get you to temper yourself, and it's not working. And then when he says, go F yourself, she looks at him and she's like, whoa. And then he gets up and knocks the microphone and he's like, no, F all this. Great character work. Killer Kross, like I said last week, deserves his time in the sun. He deserves it. He's worked hard for it, just like a lot of other men and women, but he has been cooking late, and the WWE fans recognize it. And because I believe all this is story arc, right, it seems like WWE understands it too. So they're working with that. We saw a bit more of that on Raw when Karrion Kross confronts AJ, and he confronts AJ about not taking the opportunity to knock out Logan Paul, that you're the best of us, man. And AJ's like, dude, you keep wanting me to go back to this dark place that I did not like being in. If you want this done, why don't you go do it yourself? And AJ walks off, and Karrion's like, maybe I will. So I think that they're leaning into this. I think they know what they're doing. In fact, I hesitate saying leaning into it, because I think Karrion Kross is great at what he does. And I think that his character work is phenomenal. And he's really good in the ring as well. And I think WWE recognizes that. And I think that they're working together to cultivate a really great character and build a really deep and rich story for him to play around in. So let's see how this plays out, because I think that they're letting him cook, and I think that they're letting him cook in a very good way. I think what they serve to us is going to be tasty. It's going to be delicious. We're going to sink our teeth into it, and we're going to love it. So I don't mind what happened at WrestleMania, because I feel like they're going somewhere with this. It may be a program with Killer Cross and AJ Styles, but I would love to see Killer Cross and Logan Paul and let Killer Cross beat him down. That'd be great. Anyway, moving on. Braun Breaker versus Penta versus Finn Balor versus Dominic Mysterio for the Intercontinental Championship. Let me just go ahead and say this. I was beyond hyped when Dominic Mysterio wins this match. We talked about this last week. This was another one that I wanted to see, and I'm glad that they did it. Dom is cooking, and the fans love him. Listen, Dom used to not be able to get a word in edgewise. I think the fans were sinking their teeth into booing Dom, and the fans love to boo Dom. Dom had a character to play, and that was the character you love to hate. And he played it well, and the fans loved it, and now they're giving it back. And WWE recognized that. It was an interview with John Cena. It was John Cena on the Pat McAfee show. This was after Mania, before Raw. And John did this interview, and he talked about Dom. And he talked about how Dom is such a natural in the ring, that everything that he does is just effortless. He makes everything look easy. And it's just something in him. He's just good. He even went so far as to say, by the time Dominic's career is over, and with all respect to the legacy and greatness that is Rey Mysterio, that Dominic Mysterio will be the more well-known Mysterio. And listen, that's such high praise coming from somebody like John Cena. And listen, if you're somebody who believes that that is a stupid take to make, you have every right to have your own opinion. I think that coming from someone like John Cena, that the insight that he has with regards to what it is that he has observed is probably greater than the depths of our insight as fans watching outside. We don't necessarily have to like it. I love it, but we don't have to like it for it to be a true statement. So let's just see how it plays out. Maybe your mind will change, maybe it won't, but I love Dom and I love what's happening for him. And the fact that he's IC champ now, it just throws some flavor into the championship scene, because we need this sometimes. We need to feel like these people who we place at the top of the card at any given moment, at any given event, on any given card, in any given match, anyone who's competing here could win. That's what you want. You don't want wrestling to be as predictable as you think, because we had that. We had that for a long time, and everybody cried like they hated it. Now, mind you, I understand, because I understand how chronology works, that the fans back then may not be the same fans now. So let me say this to fans now who may not have been wrestling fans back then. Believe me, you don't want your outcomes to be as predictable as you think. There was an era before Roman Reigns was the tribal chief, okay? And the big dog won everything before he started losing everything because the company was trying to course correct. And before him, there was John Cena. So, let's just dial it back a little bit. As I keep saying over and over, let WWE cook, man. If you have been a fan of WWE through the Bloodline saga, WWE should have earned some trust equity with you. Trust that they are working on something. Just because you don't understand it right now does not mean that these stories are bad. You just don't get it yet. Anyway, let me just keep going. Damian Priest versus Drew McIntyre. Honestly, this match was hard hitting. It was a great match. I think both Damian Priest and Drew McIntyre have proven that they belong at the top of the card. Damian Priest's entrance with that, I guess he's the lead guitarist for Slayer. That's a WrestleMania entrance right there. That was an excellent entrance. That ring gear, I don't know. But whatever. It was a good match. Drew McIntyre goes over. I think these two should go their separate ways. They're both solid stars now. Let them move on to new things. Honestly, it's the shortest take you're going to get from this. That's all I've really got to say about that match. It should be a one and done. Burn it, let it rock. I feel like I skipped a match from night one. Oh, I skipped a couple matches from night one, didn't I? Okay, so we can jump back to these really quick. Jacob Fatu versus LA Knight. This was a pretty good match. I thought that LA Knight needed this more than Jacob Fatu, but WWE thought different. They put the title on Jacob Fatu. So I'm assuming that the U.S. title is going to move into this Bloodline 2.0 storyline, that it's going to have something to do with Solo Sikoa, the Tongans. They may bring in some new people. I heard there's some more of the Samoan dynasty that has come from New Japan or something, and that their contracts have been up where they are and they should be coming in soon. I don't know. We'll see where they go with that. My honest opinion, man, the Bloodline story is kind of dried up for me at this point, at least where it went after Mania with Bloodline 2.0. You know, I think the stuff with Solo was fine for the time, particularly going up to him challenging Roman, but I think that kind of ran its course. And so it's doing what it's doing. I think it was better serving as a facilitator for Jacob Fatu into the spotlight. I just hope they veer into a direction that has a bit more creativity to it. And they're definitely going to go Solo versus Jacob because they haven't done that yet. And Jacob has the title now. And I think that this Solo pumping Jacob up, I think is going to run its course between the two of them storyline wise. So we'll see where that goes. LA Knight, I really hope he does not get sucked into the mid-card vortex forever because he's capable of so much more. But like I said before, WWE missed the opportunity to really pull the trigger on him when the flames underneath him were searing hot. And I think he's cooled off a bit. And where he goes from here, I don't know. I don't know. But they need to move him away from the U.S. title picture. But in that sense, where does he go? Like, don't throw him into a hodgepodge tag team. But you haven't done a really good job of building up your mid-card to where you can have feuds and angles that operate well outside of the title picture. So, you know, we really got to work on how we handle our talent when they're not in a title picture. But like we talked about before, as long as the U.S. title is beyond bronze medal, it's not going to matter. That U.S. title does not matter any more than it did before that match because Jacob Fatu has it. It really doesn't. The NXT championship matters more than the U.S. title does. It absolutely does. The NXT North American championship matters more than the WWE United States championship does. Because in NXT, these titles have a hierarchy that fits within your 3-title rotation. You have your gold, you have your silver. Do they even have a third title? I think all they have is the NXT Championship and the North American Championship. And they have the NXT Tag Team Championships. This is classic WWE. They could have a third one if they really wanted to. But like when you have those 3 championships, you solidify the hierarchy so that people have something to compete against. And it's worthwhile to become viable and relevant as either a singles competitor or a tag team specialist, right? Because the line is long and the roster is deep, you know, and you're not going to get ahead unless you lock yourself into something. But that's why the tag teams matter over there. That's why the singles competitors matter over there. That's why you can have feuds that have some weight to them that have nothing to do with the title. But anyway, Jacob Fatu goes over. Let's see what they do with the U.S. title picture. Tiffany Stratton, Charlotte Flair. Okay, this match to me was fine. I thought this match was fine. I thought Tiffany did a great job. I thought Charlotte did a great job. I thought the match was fine. I thought the finish was fine. They kept the title on Tiffany. That's what I thought they should do. My hope is that they move away from this. I think they'll figure out a decent way to separate them and move into something that's a bit more compelling. The SmackDown after Mania is obviously going to have some debuts, like Raw had some debuts. Maybe they'll bring up some NXT talent to kind of infuse SmackDown as well, both women and men. And we'll have some things to move into. I don't know where you go with Charlotte. They could have a rematch. They could have a rematch where Charlotte beats Tiffany and then Tiffany takes it back at SummerSlam, but I don't know why you do that. They've done this 3-match thing before. It's kind of part of WWE's DNA, but I hope that they have somehow gotten some, recombining of that DNA somehow, or that DNA sequence has been restructured and we're not doing that anymore, because there's no reason why we should have another match between Tiffany Stratton and Charlotte Flair anytime soon. So glad that Tiffany won. I hope they figure out something to do with Charlotte, and we're moving on. Io Sky, Bianca Belair, Rhea Ripley, triple threat match. This was a great match. This was a really great match. There was no reason to suspect that this was going to do anything else but be great, because all three of the women in this match are great. And I think the right person went over here. Io Sky retains her World Heavyweight Championship. I like the right woman won here because the storyline dictated it. For the entirety of this story arc, Rhea Ripley and Bianca Belair have been overlooking the champion. They're so focused on each other that they're not only overlooking Io, but they're disrespecting her too. And you do Io absolutely, positively, 1000% zero favors by having her lose to either one of these bulletproof females. They are made women. Regardless of what that outcome would have been, both of them would have been straight. But had Io been pie-faced one more time on the build-up to their match at Mania, and then she loses, on top of the language barrier, which makes for the willingness of the audience to support her be solely at the audience discretion. Io is incredible in the ring. And I think the fans, we choose to embrace Io and her character, because it's really difficult to get behind her character work, because oftentimes what she can do character development wise is relegated to who she's competing against, because her English is limited. And so what she's able to convey sometimes through her words is also limited. Plus, Io comes from a wrestling background that is not rooted in American wrestling and American style of dramatization in their wrestling. If you've ever watched female wrestling in Japan, there's a way that they present themselves, in the way that they dress, their mannerisms, their style. Everything about Io is reminiscent of where she cut her teeth, where she developed as a professional wrestler, her home and her place of origin. And that's natural, obviously. Some things just do not translate into American style wrestling. And that goes for anyone, not just Io. But you see this as well when we look at Lucha Libre. There are certain things that translate a little bit better with Lucha Libre because the North American continent has some similarities between Lucha Libre and American style wrestling with regards to presentation. But the difference is much easier to notice between Japanese style wrestling and American style wrestling. So it appears that a lot of the goodwill that is given to Io has a lot to do with how incredible she is in the ring and how much the fans are willing to just like her. Because one of the things I noticed on Monday Night Raw when Stephanie Vaquer, who is the current NXT Women's Champion, who is also of Chilean descent, came to the ring as a surprise and had a friendly face versus face match on Raw with Io. One of the things you notice in that promo being that both Io and Stephanie do not speak English as their first language. And because they were both face, that interaction between them was so milquetoast bland. But because they're both baby faces that we accept, it's fine. Ain't no problem. So Io would have stood, I say all that to say that Io would have stood to lose so much more had she lost to Rhea and Bianca at Mania. So the right decision, in my opinion, was made to have Io go over because Rhea's bulletproof right now. Bianca's bulletproof right now. They've solidified themselves. So whatever direction they go, whether it's face, whether it's heel, whether Rhea and Bianca are wrestling each other next, it doesn't look like that's the case. It looks like Rhea's going to be challenging Io for the title again sometime soon, which is going to be another incredible match between the two of them. But they're fine. Io stood to lose so much if she lost this. So I'm glad Io went over. Let's see what comes next. And some of these NXT women that just showed up on Raw, I don't think they're done with NXT yet. Certainly not Stephanie Vaquer. She's still the NXT Women's Champion. But Julia showed up in that segment. I think she's probably coming up really soon. And Roxanne Perez, who has been flirting with the main roster for a little while now, I think she's coming up too. So let them come up. Let's flesh out the women's division because the women's division in NXT is stacked. It's deep. And the main roster could use an influx of those women. So bring them up. All right. So now we get to Cody versus Cena. Now, let me just say this right. Let me set my paper down. It's just you and me right now talking, okay? I think that all of the hate online that is being directed towards this match is way too overblown. I think there's some things that we can agree on that were not the best. The main thing being The Rock or The Rock's lack of presence at WrestleMania 41. When you steer so heavy into the Elimination Chamber main event and The Rock wanting Cody to sell his soul to him to be his champion, Cody turning it down, and Cena becoming heel, this whole angle with The Rock and John Cena and Travis Scott, for The Rock to not be present at WrestleMania, that does suck. That's all I'm going to say about that. For everyone else, however, who is crapping on this match because they feel like John Cena is either not giving his all or John Cena's heel turn with just the minimal Titantron, but it's got his same music, him just acting like he doesn't care about the fans, that he goes into this match with Cody and it's so bad because John looks like he's not putting in the effort like he used to. People are saying this is just bad. I think you're missing the plot, homeboy. You're missing the plot. The story is literally flying right over your head. You miss all the context because of what you have been traditionally rooted into expecting from professional wrestling, and the cookie cutter BS that you claim to not like is what you're asking to now be spoon fed. I believe that John Cena's heel turn has been incredible. The subversion of expectation is absolutely fitting and apropos for the narrative that John Cena has been laying out as the impetus for his heel turn. All you want from Cena is for him to continue to perform for you, despite the fact, and mind you, this is all storyline stuff, okay? All kayfabe. That's what we do here. We talk storylines. We talk character development because these things matter. All you've wanted him to do is put on a show for you while you continually tell him that he sucks, while you continually tell him that he's bad in the ring, that he can't wrestle. You viciously mock him, and he doesn't need to do that anymore. He doesn't want to do that anymore. That you all have been terrible partners in this relationship, and he's breaking up with you. He no longer cares to do these things because he doesn't need it. You do. And you prove it every time you complain and you moan about all of these things that you used to criticize him for when he gave it to you in spades. You didn't want it then, and now he's not giving it to you, and you complain that you're not getting it, that nothing is ever good enough for you. And so I'm taking what remains of this version of professional wrestling, and it's retiring with me. And you can restart this thing and build it in whatever image you want after he's gone. And so when he gets in the match with Cody, the wrestling that he does in the ring is intentional. He's not doing the flashy moves for you anymore. He's not doing the showmanship anymore. Why do all of that when a stiff kick to the face will do? Why do a 5-knuckle shuffle when some solid jabs will work? Because he's found love for himself, and that love for himself is not reliant on your adoration or your praise or your validation. Now, take all of that and juxtapose that with his performance at Mania. You feel how you feel about that performance because you didn't get what you wanted. And that's the whole point. That's the whole point behind the character. That's the whole point behind the heel turn. He's subverting your expectation of what a heel is. See, your expectation of a heel, or let me rephrase, because I think the people who are listening to this understand, right? We're here in the Lariat Lounge, so you get it. But there are people out there who blur the lines themselves between understanding where the show starts and their participation as real people and fans ends. They blur these lines so much that they confuse themselves. You want to see a villain as a character that is being portrayed like a villain in a comic book or a villain in a movie. But in this world of professional wrestling, what is more villainous than a undead wrestler who's being led around by a pallbearer with an urn? What's more villainous than the corporate champion who gets help from the authority to win all of their matches? What's more villainous is the self-aware wrestler who realizes that they're a part of a story, who knows what his role is, knows what your role is as a fan, does not like the way they're treated, and now refuses you to give you the show that you want. It is a storyline written way to boo something that you absolutely would boo in real life. It's genius. It is meta in its commentary. I think there are people who are wrapped up in the professional wrestling world so much that they cannot allow themselves to enjoy what's happening in front of them, or they're too close to it, so close that they're unable to take a step back, refocus their lens, and bring into focus the genius storytelling that is happening right in front of them. I firmly believe that. There are just a lot of very, very cynical opinions online about WrestleMania and WWE storytelling in general. I think these people really need to learn lessons from the past. A lot of these are the same voices who all throughout the Bloodline story arc complained. They complained when Kevin Owens wasn't the guy to dethrone Roman. They complained when they didn't give it to Drew McIntyre to dethrone Roman at Clash at the Castle. They complained when it wasn't Sami Zayn after he broke away from the Bloodline. They complained when Cody Rhodes didn't finish his story at 39. These same people complain and complain and complain and complain and complain. Yet WrestleMania 40 comes around, the story reaches its culmination, and they're elated. They're elated. At what point do you learn this valuable lesson? Just because you can't perceive what is happening in a story, just because something happens storyline wise that you may or may not agree with in the moment, that this does not mean that somehow WWE has dropped the ball with storytelling, that somehow the story has derailed. I can't quite understand how you and I are watching the same product, because I feel like the criticism was valid maybe in 2019, but 5-6 years removed from that, going through the Bloodline story arc, through all of these things that when we look back at them now and we say to ourselves, this was incredible storytelling. This is incredible, incredible storytelling. These things that you yourselves will hinge so much of your criticism on now, how quickly you forget. I would just say, afford yourself a little bit of grace, okay? As agitated as I sound, I afford you a little bit of grace because we do this. We're humans. I understand. All I'm asking is that take a moment to consider the fact that maybe if you give yourself just a moment to think about the past, and think about what it is that we could have learned from our past actions. Maybe where we jumped the gun a little bit, where we only operate in the present and we make decisions to call something bad when we have no idea of understanding what's happening in the writer's room. We have no idea what future portions of the story are going to look like, despite the fact that we can look back at our recent history with the WWE and see that these stories are being concocted far ahead of time. They shift, they change, they fluctuate, they make adjustments based on what they need to do. But they have a direction and they have a focus. You can call that being a shill for WWE all you want. I call that looking at history and learning from it so as to not be a victim in the future. But it just gets so frustrating sometimes to see some of these outlets, which some of them, by the way, I unsubscribed from today, just because I just get tired of hearing it, right? The desire and the necessity for some of these outlets to be first or to be fast with their responses, the necessity to post videos quickly, have some of these people who are a part of some of these wrestling outlets who call themselves news, but don't actually report any news. They just regurgitate stories and things that they've heard from other outlets who may actually be doing some news or investigation, who put up clickbaity thumbnails that grossly overassume way too many things, or out and out fabricate posed positions that are placed in thumbnails only to then reflect on a story that does not equate to the thumbnail that they posted at all, to come onto a video and have takes that refer to so many things as bad, that refer to so many things as not good. And listen, you have a right to have your opinion. Everyone has a right to have their opinion, just like I have a right to have my opinion here. I think the problem comes in when you have so much influence and you don't give yourself any time to actually process through your thoughts before you record them and regurgitate them onto the internet for everyone else to then consume. Because there are other people who, for better or for worse, get a lot of their opinions from voices like ours. People who choose to develop a platform and share their thoughts. I don't think there's anything wrong with doing this. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing it. But what I genuinely try to do is give myself time to think on these things, to really ponder on the stories. Maybe I have an unfair advantage, okay? Maybe I have an unfair advantage that I need to admit to. My unfair advantage is I am a person who genuinely loves stories. I genuinely love character development. So for me, there's value in not just the immediacy of a story, not just the immediacy of a character beat, but what do all of these things culminate into over the span of time, the lifetime of a story or the lifetime of a character's arc. These are the things that matter. And every time you as an outlet reach a precipice in a story, a zenith in a story, a climax in a story, and all of these things are brought together for you to clearly understand, those appear to be the only times when you actually get it. And the reason I unsubscribed to quite a few of them today is because I have a very difficult time dealing with you in the in-between. In the valley between the two peaks of your understanding, you say some of the most ridiculously stupid, short-sighted comments and commentary, and I just can't process. I can't deal. And to be honest with you, listeners of the Lariat Lounge, it's the reason why I made this. It's the reason why I decided to embark on this journey with you to create a space where we can come in and have real conversations, okay? Like smart takes, hard hits, real talk. That's not just a slogan. We think about the things in professional wrestling, the world that surrounds professional wrestling, its impact, why these things matter, and all from a storyline perspective, because the stories matter and the characters matter. It's why something like the Seth Rollins, Paul Heyman. Oh, and I forgot. Let's just go into that right now because this is a perfect segue into it, right? Rollins comes out at the end of Raw with Paul Heyman. They start to cut a promo. CM Punk comes out. He's furious. He's storming to the ring. He's taping his fist as he's going. He gets into the ring and Seth and Punk begin to scrap, right? Punk gets the upper hand. Rollins gets it back. Boom. He hits Punk with the stomp. Punk is delirious now. He's in and out of it. They go back to cutting their promo. Paul said some interesting things there, what I got to go back and watch because I didn't catch all of it. But he's aligned himself with the one true star in this company. He mentioned something about WrestleMania 42, which that's what I want to know more about. But as he's saying this, Roman Reigns music hits. Roman comes out, he gets in the ring, boom, he hits Rollins with a spear. He then turns around and he hits Heyman with the Superman punch. Then Roman's in the corner, Heyman is getting up and he's lining Heyman up for a spear. And out of nowhere, Braun Breaker shows up, spears Roman out of his boots. Not literally, that would have been dope, but he spears him out of his boots. He's got his hood on. He pulls it off. It's Braun Breaker. At first, there's an air in the ring and of us watching what's happening right now. But I think we all kind of got it. And then very quickly that was confirmed when Rollins comes and puts his arm around Braun Breaker. Yo, let's go. Let's go. The new Dangerous Alliance for the WCW people out there. You know what I'm talking about. But Paul Heyman, Seth Rollins, and Braun Breaker are a new heel faction. This is better than what I was just hoping we'd get. This is incredible. Braun Breaker works great when he's in a partnership with someone. The Wolf Dogs between him and Baron Corbin when Corbin was down at NXT before he got released, they were great. And Braun Breaker does a great job as a tag team wrestler. Now, I'm not saying him and Rollins are going to be a tag team, but what I'm saying is he's going to benefit greatly from this stable. Seth Rollins is going to be a great influence for him. And Paul Heyman with them as well. Oh my gosh. I think they need one or two more people to just make the stable complete. I would love to see Becky Lynch join them. She just turned heel on Lyra. Now, I don't know what her commitments are with the Star Trek thing. And I believe I watched an interview with Seth Rollins where he was talking about Becky and how she's got another thing that he couldn't talk about. Now, I don't know if it's already completed and they can't talk about it because, maybe there's an NDA that's still there. But Becky joining this heel faction with Heyman and Seth and Breaker, oh man, that will be so good. The sky is the limit and there's a lot of possibilities here. But when you look at the story that's being told with Heyman, with Rollins, with Punk and Roman, bringing in Braun, man, this would make so much less of an impact if the story had not been laid so well between Roman and Seth and Punk over the last 2 to 3 months. If they had not interwoven Heyman into all of this as well as they did, Heyman's heel turn would not have landed as hard, and this stable would not have hit the way that it hit. And I can almost guarantee you, there are some people who I may have been talking about earlier who may not have understood or got or thought that it was great, the heel turn of Heyman, of Seth at Mania, that are totally intrigued with this stable now. If you just gave it 2 days, you would have understood it a little bit more. But the desire to post, anyway. I'm excited about this new stable. I thought that WrestleMania 41 was a great card. Yes, there were some matches up there that were fine, but overall, I thought this card was really good. I have a trust in WWE in the storytelling potential of their writing team, the direction of Triple H, that they're going to put together stories that we're going to appreciate with arcs that really matter. So I was elated with Raw. I thought that was a great follow-up. Rusev's back. So look, there's potential here. And I believe we're probably going to be getting Aleister Black on SmackDown because I know he's out of his AEW contract. This is a good time. And they landed with Raw really well. So I'm excited. I hope you all were excited. In fact, I hope you all enjoyed the podcast today because we're wrapping up. If you enjoyed Raw, hit me up and you know where to do it. Hit me up at thelariatlounge@gmail.com. Let me know what you thought of Raw. Hey, listen, if you don't share my sentiments, let me know as well. This is a welcome space for all. Yes, we have smart conversations. We have some hard hits. We have some real talks. But this is a place where all opinions are welcome. We just talk about them here, okay? I hope you all come back. I hope you all enjoyed this space. Let's talk again soon. This is the Lariat Lounge. Please watch yourself on the way out.